This is to start my this year's project for growing my garden, and I started to grow some seeds earlier this year, and today is January 22nd, Sunday, and so far what I've done is planted onion seeds. I'm gonna grow my own onions instead of using sets or buying plants. That's my goal. These yellow onions were planted actually end of December 27th, and I'm using the overseeding method where I put about 10 seeds per little square, and I used seed starting mix, and I feed them about once a week with water and some fertilizer, water soluble fertilizer. I just bottom water them, basically put them in water for 10 minutes, and whatever they can soak up, that will be it for that week. I've been actually doing it for every 6 days or so because they do dry out. So these are my onions. I used 4 6-packs, and there are about 200 seeds in here. The other thing I planted, this was later on in January, marigolds that I had saved seeds from my last year's plants. I really need just about 10 plants, and they are growing so nicely, and I'm ready to actually plant these into their own pots. This was planted January 6th, so in a couple of weeks they have grown nicely. They are under grow lights, and on the bottom shelf I have some herbs and other flowers that I'm growing, including lavender that I'm trying again for the 3rd year. I never had any success with growing from seed. This year I purchased a heating pad. I got this from eBay. It was about 15 bucks. Don't buy those really expensive ones from a garden center. And this is working nicely. I also planted some other type of onions. These are red onions, and these were planted a little later, a month later or so. Not a month later, but 2 weeks later than the yellow ones. But they are really germinating very slowly, and I actually had to reseed some of these because I only had 4 or 5 out of, I don't know, 20 or 30 seeds. So between these 2 6-packs, I now have about 100 seeds. So we'll see how many I'm actually gonna get. So let me pull this out. I have some poppies and 2 different kinds of poppies, sage. I have some thyme. This is rosemary, and these are some chamomiles. Can't really see what these are. Columbine. This is evening stock. That's nice, annual. And again, these are the onions. So these are 2 different reds. This red here is called ruby red. And these are not too bad, not as good as the yellow ones, but still. And these are called grano red. If I could put this back in. Okay. And this line is daisies, a couple of different daisies. This is a viola, and again, this is the lavender. Lavender has nothing in it still, and these were all planted January 6th. So far I have planted the onions in December, only because I couldn't wait to see how they're gonna grow. Last year I did not have much success with growing from seed, and the other lot, including the marigold and the herbs and the other flowers, they all were planted January 6th. So the setup is that I have this really cheap plastic shelf that I had for years, and this can be taken apart, and it has two shelves. On the top I don't have anything yet really, but on the bottom of the top shelf and the bottom of the bottom shelf I had hung just really cheap shop lights. These are like 15 bucks each, and that helps me to grow them indoors and get a head start with the growth. So the next thing I'm gonna plant, and I'm gonna just wait until February, is the peppers, some more herbs like basil, and I have some more flowers that I'm gonna plant. And in March I'm gonna plant my tomatoes, and I'm gonna grow some other vegetables that I may start in March. So that's it for now. Let's see how this is gonna work. I'm trying to record transplanting my seedlings. I'm gonna work on the marigold today, and also I am going to work on the thyme, because that seems to be big enough for transplanting, and some of the flowers. So what I'm going to do is take them out of the current little cells and place them into their own little pot, these strange pots. Once I'm done with that, I'll show you my setup here in the basement, and also where I'm putting these temporarily while it's still cold outside. I'm going to put them into an old greenhouse that I cover with plastic sheet, and just keep it inside. The main thing for that, because I have cats and I don't want them to get to these. So let's do the marigold first. For the potting mix I'm using some homemade compost. There is some vermiculite in there, and also I have some bagged potting mix mixed in with that, some leftover, which has nutrients as well, some fertilizer. So the marigold is now big enough to get its own pots, so I'm going to fill up my pot first with the potting mix. And I'm probably going to need about 10, but for now I'm just going to do 2 at a time. And I make them pretty packed with the potting soil. So let's go ahead and take out a couple of them. I just take out one cell at a time. I could probably dump the whole thing because they're pretty sturdy. And gently take them apart. I like to just tease them apart this way. I watered them yesterday and I probably shouldn't have. It would have been much easier if it was drier. So what you want to do is not necessarily hold the stem, but hold the leaf, and then you can see the stem intact, and then you have a nice root down further. I'm going to go ahead and make a deep hole here. And put the flower in there. And dump it down a little. This lighting is so bad here, it's just blinding me, so I'm going to move it a little bit down this way. Okay. Alright, so that looks good. That's one. And so on and so on. So I'll be back when it's all done. Next will be the thyme. And for the marigold, I planted all of the sprouted plants, all the seedlings. So I have now 12. I'm only going to need 10 for the front yard, but I'm going to probably find a place for the other two. Not a problem. As far as the thyme, I really don't need that much, so it's too many. I'm going to just plant probably I would say 6 the most. We'll see. So it's interesting how all of them sprouted in this block, but only a couple of them in this block. So obviously I'm not using those. I usually end up planting 2 little cells for the herbs and flowers, unless I want more than a couple of them. Then I plant the whole 6 cells like I did for the marigold. Plus if they're bigger anyway. So now I'm just going to empty this cell as well, because then I'm not going to expect something to grow. Since I still have a couple of things here that needs to grow on its own, I'm going to put these back to under the grow light. Alright, so this is not very different from what we did for the marigold, except these are much tinier, and they do have a really good root system, pretty deep for their size. So let's see how many are going to survive. There's one. As I said, I only need probably 5 or 6. 2. I'll pick the biggest ones. Here's a good one. And sometimes you can just pull it by the leaf nicely. That's a nice one. Alright, let's see what else we can get out of this. Here's another one. So I can take a look at the sizes. That's too small. This seems to be too small. That's a nice one. I hate to throw those out, but there's just no way I can have space for all these, and I'm not gonna ever eat them. So all you have to really need is for cooking purposes, probably just one plant, and that will give you enough for your cooking needs, even if you cook with them every day. But I like to use them also as deterrent and for decoration. Ooh, this is a nice one. I'm gonna keep that one for sure. Okay, so now decisions. Alright, so this looks a little small. I might have to plant more than I thought I would want to. Okay, I'll scrap that one. This one. So we have 6. Now what I've been doing is I have a cup here. Since I'm using compost that I made, I have a lot of earthworms in this mix, so as I'm finding them, I'm putting them in here, and they will go out in the garden when I'm done planting here. Okay, so same process, 3-inch pots. And same mix. So I'll be back when I'm done with this one. The next on my list is the poppies. Can't really tell which ones are how big, but I think these 2 kinds are ready to be transplanted. Now these are two different kinds, and I believe these are annual, and the California poppy I believe are perennials. These out, and I probably will keep all of them unless I find something really tiny and weak. Otherwise it's probably gonna give me about 10 poppies. We'll be back. So this is the setup in my basement, my potting bench that I built based on Anna White's plan. It cost me about $50 in wood. Lumber, really cheap lumber, the cheapest one you can get, 2x4s and some 1x4s. And it took me just a weekend to put it together. The cutting was the major part of it, and then screwing it together. So I really like the construction, and it allows me to store all my stuff on the bottom. I have my pots on the top and any kind of tools I use often just hanging there. And here's where I mix my potting mix. Depending on what I'm doing, if I'm just planting seeds, I would use Jiffy seed starting mix straight up. And when I'm ready to plant the seedlings, as I told you earlier, I mix my own compost and whatever else I have handy to make it lighter. Perlite or vermiculite are my choices. And I do put in fertilizer if I'm not using a bagged mix like I'm doing today. I'm using this potting mix. As far as the poppies, I had 12 poppies, but I ended up planting them in pairs into these cups, just to save space, plus they just really grow upwards and downwards, not as much getting wider. They have long roots, and these are just plastic cups with holes on the bottom that I punched, and it's good because you can write on it as to what's in it if you needed to, and reuse them. This is the second year I've been using these, so I don't have to buy new ones every time. So this is the final outcome of my potting today, and what I'm going to do is just move them to my little greenhouse inside the house, where they can get enough light. They don't need grow lights anymore, and they will get daytime light readily available for them until they're ready to go outside to the outside greenhouse, or better yet, if I can plant them directly outside.